Hello everyone, Athena Artiste here, back with a standalone video primarily on the topic of map selection in Banished, because I have decided to end my series that was with this map, which is the Adam and Eve start under very harsh conditions, and talk about why I would not have tried to play a map like this out to long-term development because it was actually a compromise map. Okay, take things back. When I started this series, the 1.60 of Colonial Charter Forged Awaken had just come out. So there were two things that I wanted to showcase in this series. Was number one, the ability to start with an Adam and Eve start under very harsh conditions, and how you could build a viable community with that, which I think I have done quite well in my series. The other thing was to showcase the dock features that were then new in that version of Colonial Charter. And that is where it came to be a compromise map, because at that time the only one where we could get a fair amount of water like this was with this marsh setup. And because it is the marsh setup, it has all of these lakes there all over the place. And there's not, here and there's spots where there's a fairly good amount of land, but there's an awful lot of water space, which meant, as I did in my episode, I felt the need that I had to fill in this particular set of lakes here, simply so I had enough space to get things up and rolling. So, like I said, I never have felt that this is a good map for long-term play, because, well, it would be easier today under Colonial Charter 1.62, but like I said, when I launched it, I didn't have that, and so I always knew it was a compromise map to begin with. So enough said on this. I'm going to load up a few other maps and talk about them and explain some of the things. Well, I'm actually going to go back and to plain vanilla Banished and talk about some things there and move forward. So, see you in a bit. Here, this is a map, and let me bring up the details so that you could see that. This is actually a map generated from within the plain version of Banished. It is a valleys map with the terrain size set at medium, the climate of harsh, and so forth, which is a very challenging setup in the plain version of Banished. Now, would this map make for a good play environment? Because remember, if I don't have any of those mods, like Colonial Charter or many of the others enabled, I'm not going to be able to flatten anything or have all those wonderful tools and features that we have. So, one of the difficulties would be, for example, dealing with this great big mountain here. Now, I could put a tunnel. If I were to build a tunnel, I could do one through this part, and you could see that it would not be very long of a tunnel. But, say for example, I had a much bigger mountain range where I had to go something like this way with it. Well, that is a really long tunnel, and people would not be able to travel that distance. I mean, I could build it, but it would be very awkward and difficult for my people to move around through it. And the thing is, with this mountain where it is at, see, this is too low. Oh, I guess I could put a tunnel there. because this would be the other thing. If yes, I would have to put my tunnels through this part maybe, and over here through this part. But then how do I get them from this area through down to here? And I guess I could put a little tunnel right in there, so that could be accomplished. But that's not always true. And these are the things you do have to think about when you are choosing a map. Especially if you're using the plain version of Banished, and what you have to think about so as to get a setup going that's going to work. Now, the trade river for this map is down in here. And I'm going to point out a few things that are nice about this map for those of you who are still playing Banished under the regular play. See this here? This is where the island kind of does an oxbow loop. I think that's what that's called. Which in other words means if I were to put a fishery right in here, they would have a lot more water area than they would in other places. I can't go too much further out there because I don't have quite a big enough there, but I can still get quite a bit of that. So when you're placing like a fishery, you do need to look for that. Look for where there's a bend in the river or something like this, or for example, this, if there was a way where this was nice and flat, you could even put one out in here so it would stand out over the water, and you could get a fair amount of fishing space in there. Because after all, the more water there is around the fishery, the more fish they will be able to catch. So, that's what I wanted to say about this kind of a map, is that the other thing you want to think about too, the other thing I wanted to talk about very quickly here is something I've actually run into, is, for example, in this kind of a map, is you see how this landmass is connected to this other one, but it's very thin in here. Now this is not some place where you could put a road, so you just can't. It's real hit and miss as to where you could put a road in there. You just can't drop one in and have it come all the way up and through there. You see, it doesn't want to do it. So that would be something I would have to be a little bit creative with, coming up with a way to get people from this sort of area over to here or over to here, which in other words would mean probably putting in one bridge here like this, and another one over here like that, and possibly even one right across there, so as to make sure that I wasn't getting anyone, because that's the other thing I've had occur when you have a situation like this, is you could get someone stuck out there, and if they don't have any way to get back out, then they can eventually freeze or starve to death or something, because they can't get out of wherever it is that they're at and get back to where they can get food and shelter and so forth. So these kind of things, especially in the regular Banished maps, are quite tricky, and you have to be aware of that when you are setting up your town and everything, so as to make sure, because you would not have that tool to flatten your terrain or anything, so you have to be careful that they don't do that. But that's about all I wanted to talk about here on the regular type of map with the Banished game. So let's look at another map, and I'll talk about that one then. Okay, here we are with the map that I'm going to be using, and this is going to be another long-running series, such as my Waterworld one, which I'm going to call Very Harsh Farming. because this is going to be a regular hard start. But my map, okay, this is a red desert map. The terrain size is very large. Climate conditions, again, are very harsh. And I've actually set it to use the palm trees as the start, because this is a red desert after all, even though they have snow on the ground and everything. And when I build my forester, I will actually be building the, well, that is when I'm building the regular forester, I'll be building the one that kind of matches that. Now, let's talk about this map for a bit and why I think this is going to be a good candidate for a long-term development. First of all, let me bring up the overall map. As you can see, the trade river does kind of come through. It goes through quite a bit of the map area, which means that because I will be setting up multiple trade outposts over time, because that way I will actually have multiple ones along this route. Another advantage is I have this lake that's right over here, quite close to my spawn point. It's not real close, and that is going to be the big challenge at the first, is to get my people from where they spawned over here up to here where I want to set up their initial community with their first market and so forth, so that they have a fishery going up here in this lake, and probably some of the forest production and so forth going on in this area. And they also have, which is another thing I do really look for, well, they have quite a number of small little rivers up here in this part of the map, which is something I always have liked, so that I could set up things, some of the buildings that go up on the edges of the river. But the other thing I have is I have this mountain right here, which again is quite accessible. It's not far away from where my spawn point is, and it is big enough. See if I bring in my, let's see, where am I looking for here? Yeah, if I bring in a regular mine, you see, yes, I'll have to do a little bit of tweaking on this mountain, but I am going to be able to easily get 3 regular mines, one for iron, one for coal, and a precious ores mine, one of those, in this area without any trouble at all, other than, as I said, I'm tweaking this part of it. So I'm not a total purist when it comes to maps, in that I will tweak things, but I do like to play them as presented as much as possible, so as to keep up with the intent of the designer of this map, whoever that was, that set up this as the challenge. Because there are some things, oh, and there's another little mine there, and mountain there and there. I didn't notice that. Well, that's kind of cool. But again, oh, there, and then there's a nice little area for like a traditional fishery with all that water right going on around there too. So like I said, you have to study your maps for a while and decide, well, is this going to be viable or not for long-term play? And if there's a question, we'll take a look at it and see if come up with a plan to work around whatever those challenges are right at the outset, because there's no sense in you putting a lot of time in on developing some sort of a town, because if you really wanted one that covers the entire map, it is going to take you a very long time of playing to do that, and you're not going to be happy if it's too hard. I mean, impossible, I should say, not too hard. Because I like challenge, but I don't want something that's impossible, if you get that distinction. So, that's what I'm going to say. And that is going to be the end of this video, and I'm going to consider this my briefing insofar as the map that I'm using. The mods, of course, are the same as those that I've been using in my other series. So I don't need to get into when I launch this series. I won't be spending any time talking about that. So I will see you again in one or the other of my series that are continuing. Thanks for your attention and your understanding. Bye for now.